Have you ever been playing Immortal Empires and thought, this is neat and all, but I sure wish the map was twice as big, lore accurate, and while you're at it, throw in a pre-Potion of Speed Warhammer 2 turn timer. If you've ever had that weirdly specific sequence of thoughts, then the Old World campaign is exactly what you've been looking for. It adds a whole new campaign to the game, complete with nearly 1,300 settlements, hundreds of new factions, and places almost every single lord from the game and 9 years of DLC into a lore-accurate location. How well does it all work in game, and is it any good? Let's take a look and find out. This is another mod that's kinda hard to talk about other than just doing a Germa and gesturing your attention to the map screen. It's more or less an entirely new map to play inside of, complete with all new areas, settlements, minor factions, and more. I think the best way to show it off is to show the main areas in base game Immortal Empires and compare them to how they are in the Old World. So first of all, the New World. It starts in the northwest of the map, and at the top we have the Chaos Wastes, and these cover pretty much the entire north in a relatively solid band. Moving southward, we come to the Frozen Mountains of Nagrond, housing most of the Dark Elves, alongside the odd other factions such as Grombrindal, Alifinar, and Katep. In the middle we have the connecting land between Lustria and Nagrond, with Ulthuan just off the coast, which is of course primarily covered in High Elves. As we move down into Lustria, it's mainly Lizardmen and Skaven, with a number of other factions from Chaos, the Empire, Vampire Coast, and even Bretonnia. Lastly, at the very bottom we have the western point of the Southern Chaos Wastes, and these don't quite travel the full width of the map, but still span a good 2/3 of it. Over in the Old World campaign, you may be surprised to find out that it doesn't actually include the New World. The most we have is this new archipelago area, loaded with the Vampire Coast, various forms of Chaos, Elves, Ogres, and more. We have a few stragglers from Lustria over on Albion, at the very western edge of the map like Crone Helbron and Krokgar, off the coast of the realm of Slaanesh, and yeah, I'll get back to that later. The Northern Old World, not the mod. In the north, it's more Chaos Wastes, moving down into Norsca, which isn't quite the same thing, but not far off. We also have Albion covering the western point. Moving down, you have the Norscan Sea, ending on the Kislev coastline, where they take over until the Central Mountains. Further south, we of course have the Empire, full of a bunch of elect accounts, alongside various forms of Chaos and Undead. Heading back west, we have the Grey Mountains, moving into Bretonnia, which takes up the entire coastline, bordering Ulthuan, right up until the top of the Southlands. And of course, Wood Elves are nestled into Athel-Loren, mostly keeping to themselves in a smaller area. In the Old World campaign, this is of course one of the most expanded areas in the game, since it's, the Old World. Starting from the top, the Chaos Wastes and Norsca have been combined and are now a huge landmass that spans over half the width of the map. The structure is still more or less the same, it's just a whole lot bigger. There's a couple of new magical forests alongside an expanded Hell Pit area with 3 circular regions that looks pretty damn cool. There's still the Sea of Claws separating it from the shores of the Empire, leaving the only way in by land through the territory of Kislev. Kislev is also huge now, easily the size of the base game's Imperial lands, and there's no shortage of interlopers like Azhag, Beastmen, Undead, and all kinds of chaos. The 3 major cities are now a part of large powerful provinces instead of single settlement provinces, making them a lot more powerful. Kislev of course leads into the Empire, which is now a truly massive area of the map. Each of the elect account states are now huge multi-province bits of land and will take some real work to wrestle control over. Their major dock cities of Marienburg, Altdorf, and Nuln have been converted into 3 settlement dock provinces. The entire area is much larger and more detailed, but also more full of threats than ever. All the usual threats are here alongside a large number of new ones. The vampire counts have expanded, ogres, greenskins, and even some tomb kings have seeped in from the south, so you'll have a hard time expanding at all. The previously smaller mountain barrier is now a hard band encircling the Empire, and beyond it, Bretonnia has also expanded in size, though not quite as dramatically. Where the Empire feels like they've tripled, Bretonnia is more like doubled, so still larger but not quite as Goliath. Similarly, this increased size also means more threats, with Skaven, Chaos, and Greenskins being spread throughout. Athel-Loren is also much larger, with over triple the number of settlements surrounding the Oak of Ages, and the area itself being a much larger plot of land, so it'll be a lot more challenging of an area to stroll through. The Southlands pick up where we left off, where Bretonnia ends and goes right into the Southern Realms, where Ekit is waiting to nuke them. The Southern Realms continues with mountains, greenskins and dwarves to the north, and vampires to the south, eventually going all the way to the Badlands and Central Mountains. The Badlands is of course the main home of the greenskins, alongside various forms of Chaos and a couple of Skaven. Eventually this leads to the deserts of Nehekara and Araby, alongside the Southern Jungle, with the Southlands mountains running down the middle. And of course we have most of the Southern Chaos Wastes lying in wait at the bottom. Back over in the Old World campaign, coming out of the bottom of Bretonnia, the landmass stretches much further west before looping around the mountains towards the Badlands. There's many more factions from the Southern Realms, alongside undead, beastmen, ogres, and Skaven. The coastline and mountains run much further east, connecting up with the Grey Mountains before stretching down to Sartosa. The land then follows the mountains all the way to the dwarves of the Central Mountains before connecting down to the top of the Badlands. Like Immortal Empires, these continue south until the desert, only they're much larger and full of a variety of factions. The desert now spans all the way to the western edge of the map, connecting up to the realm of Siege. To the east, the desert weaves through the mountains before turning into jungle on the far eastern edge of the map, connecting to the realm of Nurgle. The entire area is laid out very similarly to normal, but is much larger in every area, especially the more southern parts. In Immortal Empires, the Central Mountains region runs right down the full length of the map and is comprised of two bands of mountains with a wasteland in between. The Western Mountains are home mostly to dwarves and greenskins and connect the wastelands to the Old World and the Southlands. The wastelands run from the Chaos Waste all the way down to the Sea of Storms. The very southern coast houses Imric and a number of Skaven, and of course the north is more Chaos, but most of the middle is home to Chaos Dwarves alongside their employees. And the Eastern Mountains connect the wastelands to the east and is mainly home to various ogre factions with Chaos at the top and various kinds of Decay to the south with Helman and Kugath. In the Old World campaign, again the layout is very similar to before, but things have been scaled up significantly. The Western Mountains connect Kislev to the wasteland and house the usual suspects, alongside extra Skaven, ogres, and more. The path through the mountains is now a lot longer and more perilous, so it'll be a challenge to navigate without some form of underway stance. The wasteland is now a huge expanse, at least double the width it was before. The coastline still houses Imric and a number of ogres and greenskins. Heading north, there are huge single settlement provinces surrounded by more standardly laid out options on the edges. There are still bands of mountains, but they're now walkable areas of land rather than simple barriers. Eventually, you reach the lands of the Chaos Dwarves, their most southern territory surrounding the Tower of Gorgoth, which marks the start of their railway heading further north. Surrounding this are more wasteland provinces alongside a few on the Ivory and Silver Road, connecting the mountains to each other. Eventually, the tracks enter the Chaos Dwarf industrial wastelands. This is one of the most densely populated areas of the map, with a large number of provinces crammed into a patch of ice and fire-coated wasteland with Zarnagrund in the centre. This area is walled off from its surroundings, save for a few narrow passages, making it a very defensible location. Beyond this, it's wastelands which eventually become the last remnants of Kislev, and of course some Chaos Wasteland at the very top, eventually connecting to the realm of Khorne in the very northeast. The Eastern Mountains stretch from the wastelands to the eastern edge of the map, so yes, that means no Cathay either. Zhao Ming is still in play on the very eastern edge, but he'll have no Nepo Empire to fall back on. Again, the Mountains of Morn are much the same, only much larger, with a large number of ogres with some new additional foes, such as Chaos and Bretonnia. They end about 2/3 of the way down to become slightly more livable wasteland, before connecting to the Noblar Hills and jungles, where you can find Helman, and eventually a Chaos Dwarf oil rig and the realm of Nurgle. Now, to just jump straight into the mod review, I'm going to start by laying out everything bad about actually playing this mod, because more than others, it has some very clear downsides that you should know before you actually play it. First of all, turn timers. If you were around before the Potion of Speed update for Warhammer 2, you'll know what I'm talking about, but if you're not, turn times on this map are astronomically long. We're talking over a minute per turn, and when you're in the early game, you can complete your actual turn in seconds if you're just moving an army or something. It obviously doesn't break the game, but when you're sat staring at the turn timer for potentially hours over a long campaign, it'll start to get pretty annoying. There's nothing that can fix this, as it simply is down to the sheer size of the map and number of factions, so I'm not exactly calling this a problem, as much as it is part of the price of having a map so large. Speaking of which, this map is extraordinarily huge. Immortal Empires is big, but relatively dense. In general, you can get from one settlement to another in just over a turn of normal movement stance. In the Old World, settlements are much more spread out, which does make the world feel a lot more realistic, but comes at the cost of a lot more turns spent just moving around instead of doing anything. Kislev is a great example, as the lands are much more spread out, which does make them feel a lot more like they're spread out tribes instead of another empire. Again, this isn't anything that ruins the game, but it does bring down the pace significantly, and when you combine this with the longer turn timers, it makes you realize just how much of your life you're spending doing nothing instead of playing. This could technically be fixed, but not without drastically reducing the size of the map and compromising on the design and vision, which would likely go against the point of the mod. The larger size allows the map to have all kinds of unique areas with really cool design. The Chaos Dwarf wastelands leading into their factory realm with train tracks and smokestacks everywhere looks exceptionally cool, and shrinking the map for the benefit of gameplay would inevitably compromise that. Despite this massive size, you're still missing certain areas of Immortal Empires. Basically, all of the New World is gone, so if you want to see an expanded Lustria, Ulthuan, or the frozen Dark Elf Mountains, too bad, they don't exist. Alongside this, you're missing out on a number of playable factions. Granted, the majority of factions are playable, so by the time you come around to the factions that are missing, you'd still have played thousands of hours of the game, most of which you'd spend in the turn timers. But on the off chance that one of your favourites is one of the missing lords, it can suck to see that they're totally unplayable. Now, I'm laying out all of these downsides first for a few reasons. First of all, I think it's important to show you honestly, as it lets you know what problems you're likely to face if you try this yourself. This is an absolutely fantastic mod with a whole new campaign giving you a whole new area to play in, but it's not a flawless experience, so I want you to know what to expect. And secondly, aside from these things I've mentioned here, this mod is pretty outstanding. I like or love pretty much everything else. The parts of the map that are here are not just expanded in size but also detail. I've already mentioned Hell Pit and the Chaos Dwarf Wastelands, but there are dozens more areas that are now iconic parts of the map instead of just another settlement. The train tracks go the full length of the wasteland, showing how the Chaos Dwarf industrial machine is able to work so well. The 4 Chaos Realms on the corner of the map is something I would love to see added to Immortal Empires. Being able to take the fight all the way to the home of Chaos is an incredibly cool concept and would no doubt make for a great endgame war against Chaos into a serious challenge. I could go on, but I want to leave some for you to discover. Just know to keep your eyes peeled at all times, as you'll never stop finding cool stuff. The increased size also adds many new minor factions, and most areas of the map have whole new antagonists spread throughout to make things more interesting. Bretonnia in particular had a serious problem in base game when they have basically no threats without venturing into the Empire, Norsca or Southern Realms, none of which will be particularly fun or easy to do without angering allies. Now they have a few more local threats to keep them busy until something powerful enough gets through to bring the fight to them. The Empire has a similar increase in enemies that they had no shortage to begin with. I would say this campaign is likely to be harder than Immortal Empires for the majority of players and factions, as an increase in size and enemies inherently makes it more difficult to hold onto your lands. But I believe that increase in difficulty also comes with a huge increase in size faction when you manage to get in control. If you unite the Empire as Khal, you'll have control over a huge area of the map. And equally, if you raise through Kislev as Chaos, you'll see the wasteland you left behind in your wake instead of a handful of settlements. Sure, this mod has some issues, and they're very much worth considering before giving it a go. But if you can get past the inconvenience, there really is so much here to enjoy. But that's all I have for the Old World campaign mod. Let me know what you think of the map and the mod, as well as any other mods you'd like me to take a look at. Like, subscribe, and if you want more Warhammer 3 mod videos, then check out this one all about the legendary characters modded units.